He smirked and said, "Bet you can't fix that." It was his $1 million McLaren. I looked him dead in the eye and said, "Watch me." What started as a dare turned into a moment that would change both our lives, forever. If you believe women, especially us black women, can do anything we set our minds to, hit that like button, subscribe, and stay till the end. Because this story, oh, it's not what you expect. It was one of those perfect Saturdays, sun high, sky clear, and the smell of fuel and funnel cake floating through the air. I was at this local car meet, walking between rows of muscle cars and supercars, my eyes locked on one thing, the McLaren. Midnight black, rims that sparkled like diamonds, and an engine that purred like a wildcat. I didn't come to impress anyone. I just loved machines. Always had. So when I leaned in to admire the engine and started talking to the owner about what I'd tweak, I didn't expect the laughter. Jason, that's his name, dressed head to toe in designer, leaned back on the hood and smirked. "You know how to cook, sweetheart, not fix a car like this." People laughed. I didn't. I looked at him and said, "Try me." His grin got wider. "All right then, something's off with her cooling. Fix it, and I'll admit you're the real deal." He tossed me the keys like it was a game. I caught them midair. My hands didn't shake. My heart didn't race. Because when someone underestimates you that hard, that's the moment you stand up, not step back. I said yes and meant it. Most people see grease under my nails and assume I don't belong, like there's a list somewhere of what women, black women, are allowed to be interested in, and cars didn't make the cut. But I didn't get into this to prove anyone wrong. I got into this because it was the only thing that ever made sense to me. When I was little, my daddy used to take me out back behind our house, where he worked on old pickups and busted engines. I remember holding a flashlight while he replaced a carburetor, oil dripping down his arm, him humming some old blues song like it was just another day. That garage was our church. That's where I learned patience, problem solving, and the beauty of building something back better than before. By the time I was 15, I could change brake pads with my eyes closed. But no matter how good I got, people still saw me as a fluke, a novelty. I lost count of how many times men laughed when I said I was a mechanic. "You sure you're not just holding the tools for your boyfriend?" they'd ask. I'd smile, say nothing, and let my work speak. But deep down, it always lit a fire in me. Not anger, just fuel. I kept my head down, saved up, and eventually opened my own tiny garage on the east side of town. Nothing fancy. Rusted signs, 2 lifts, and a dream. But it was mine. I didn't need anyone's permission, and I made sure every little girl who stepped through those doors knew that she didn't either. So when Jason tossed me those keys, he wasn't just daring me to fix his McLaren, he was daring everything I'd fought to become. I stepped up to that McLaren like it was just another job. People started circling around, some whispering, others outright chuckling. Jason stood off to the side, arms crossed, phone out, recording me like I was some street performer about to crash and burn. I didn't care. I blocked them all out. Just me and the machine now. I popped the hood and leaned in. Clean build, top of the line, everything. But I could tell from the engine temperature and the way the car had idled earlier that it was running too hot. Cooling issue, like he said. Probably the thermostat, maybe a sensor acting up. I asked one of the nearby vendors, an older guy I'd seen around, for a few tools. He looked surprised, but handed them over with a nod, like he knew what was about to happen. As I worked, my mind slowed down. It always does when I'm in my zone. I wasn't thinking about proving anyone wrong or making a point. I was just fixing a car. My hands moved with muscle memory, unscrewing panels, checking hoses, testing the system line by line. The crowd got quiet. That kind of quiet that happens when people are waiting for something big to go either really right or really wrong. I could feel Jason watching me, but I never looked up. I just kept moving. 10 minutes in, I found it. A faulty sensor tucked near the coolant line. Nothing major, but enough to mess with the car's performance. I reset the system, made a quick patch, and then stood up, wiped my hands on my jeans, and handed him back the keys. Try it now, I said, calm as ever. He slid into the driver's seat, turned the key, and that engine purred like it had just come off the lot. The moment that engine roared back to life, smooth and steady, the whole energy shifted. That purr? It wasn't just the sound of a car running right. It was the sound of every doubt in that parking lot melting into silence. Jason blinked like he couldn't believe it. For a second, he just sat there with his hands on the wheel, not saying a word. Then he stepped out, walked around the car like maybe I'd swapped it out with a different one while he wasn't looking. People started clapping. Not loud, not over the top, but the kind of slow building clap that grows from respect. A couple of older women near the back gave me the warmest smiles. One even nodded like, "That's right, baby. Show 'em." I'll never forget that. Jason finally broke his silence. "You actually fixed it," he said, like it had never occurred to him I could. I just gave him a small smile. "Told you," I said. But the real moment, the real shift, was in his eyes. That arrogance, that smugness, it cracked, not disappeared, but cracked enough for something real to peek through. He wasn't looking at me like a joke anymore. He was looking at me like a question he couldn't answer. He ran a hand over his hair and chuckled, a little awkward. "All right, who are you?" he asked. And for the first time since I touched his car, his tone wasn't mocking. It was curious, maybe even impressed. That's when I knew something had changed, not just in how he saw me, but in how the whole crowd did. That dare? It was supposed to put me in my place, but instead it gave me a platform. And trust me, I wasn't about to waste it. Jason stood there looking at me like I'd just flipped his whole world upside down. And maybe, in a way, I had. He walked over, still holding the keys, still looking at the McLaren like it was some kind of lie he'd been living. "Seriously, though," he said, "who are you?" I laughed a little, not because it was funny, but because I'd been waiting my whole life for someone to ask that question and actually mean it. "Name's Ayana," I said. "I run a garage out on 43rd and Maple. Nothing fancy. Just me, a couple of lifts, and a lot of elbow grease." He blinked. "You own a garage?" "Built it from the ground up," I said. "Started with one toolbox and a dream." Something softened in his face then. That polished, put-together rich guy act faded a little. He tucked his hands in his pockets and nodded slowly, like he was seeing me for the first time. "That's impressive," he said. "Most people wouldn't have touched this car, let alone fixed it." "Yeah, well," I shrugged. "Most people aren't underestimated from the minute they walk in a room either. You learn to rise to the challenge." We stood there a moment, the crowd starting to drift off, the buzz dying down. He wasn't filming anymore. No smug grin, just silence. Then he said, "I grew up around money. Everything came easy. College, job offers, even this car. But I've never had to fight for anything. Not like that." I nodded. "That's the thing. People like me, we don't get to coast. We have to hustle for every inch. And sometimes we have to fix a McLaren in a parking lot just to be heard." He chuckled, but it wasn't sarcastic this time. "Can I see your garage sometime?" That caught me off guard. "You serious?" He looked me dead in the eye. "Dead serious. I think I've got some learning to do." I didn't say yes right away. I studied him, really studied him. And in that moment, I didn't see a rich man trying to make a joke out of me. I saw someone who, maybe for the first time in his life, realized he didn't know everything and that takes a different kind of courage. All right, I said finally, but just know we don't hand out respect at my place. You earn it, same way I did. He smiled. Fair enough. And just like that, a dare meant to knock me down turned into the start of something unexpected. A conversation, a connection, a door opening where one had just slammed shut. Funny how life works. You show up to a car meet thinking you'll admire a few engines and end up rewriting someone's story, including your own. A few days passed, and honestly, I didn't expect to hear from Jason again. People say things in the moment all the time, especially when they're surprised or embarrassed. I figured he'd go back to his high rise life, his luxury world, and I'd go back to fixing up family vans and beat up trucks in my little shop. That's the way these stories usually go, right? But then, on a slow Wednesday morning, I heard the deep rumble of an engine pull up outside. I stepped out, and there it was, that same sleek McLaren sitting in front of my garage like a UFO had landed on my street. Jason stepped out in jeans and a hoodie this time, not a designer suit. No phone out, no crowd watching, just him. He walked up, nodded at me, and said, "You weren't lying. This place really is yours." I raised an eyebrow. "Thought you'd changed your mind." He smiled. "Actually, I've been thinking about it all week." I gave him a quick tour, showed him the lifts, the hand-me-down tools, the little office I converted from a shipping container. He didn't say much, just listened, watched, asked real questions. Then, when we were standing near the back where the sunlight came in through the open garage door, he said, "I want to invest." I laughed. I actually laughed out loud. "You want to what now?" "I want to help you grow this," he said, eyes steady. "Not take over, not change it, just help." I stared at him. For a long second, I didn't say a word. You have to understand, I'd been working for years to get this place off the ground, turning down vacations, skipping meals, patching leaky pipes myself. And here comes this man, standing in a garage that still smells like burnt oil and offering to invest in me. "Why?" I asked. "What do you get out of it?" He paused. "I get to be part of something real, something that matters. And maybe I get to unlearn some things I didn't even know I needed to." It wasn't easy, saying yes. I've spent my life trusting my gut, not handouts. But this didn't feel like charity. It felt like respect. Mutual, earned. So I made him a deal. "If we do this, it's under one condition. We don't just fix cars, we fix futures. I want a mentorship program for girls, for young women who've been told they're too loud, too soft, too black, too poor, too different to succeed in a space like this." Jason smiled. "Deal." That handshake felt different. It wasn't a business move. It was a full circle moment. A week ago, he dared me to prove I belonged. Now he was standing in my space, daring himself to be better. Turns out, sometimes the biggest engine you rebuild is a person's perspective. It started like a ripple, small, quiet, almost easy to miss. But ripples grow, and before I knew it, my life was moving faster than I could have imagined. A week after Jason and I shook hands, a local journalist dropped by the garage. She'd heard about the McLaren story from someone at the car meet and wanted to see the woman behind the wrench. I thought it would be a small write-up in the back of the paper. But that article, it spread like wildfire. Suddenly, people were showing up at my shop, not for oil changes, but for inspiration. Parents brought their daughters. Teachers sent students. Girls who'd never been allowed near a toolbox were walking through my doors, eyes wide, full of questions. Some just wanted to look around. Others wanted to get their hands dirty. We welcomed them all. Jason kept to his word. He didn't just throw money at us. He stayed involved. Quietly, respectfully. He helped upgrade the shop, brought in diagnostic tools I never could have afforded, and helped set up a little classroom space in the back corner. He even arranged for a few women engineers to come speak, share their stories, and show these girls what was possible beyond the shop. We launched the mentorship program 2 months later. We called it Grease Queens. Catchy, right? Every Saturday, I ran workshops where young girls learned the basics: changing a tire, checking oil, understanding engines. But more than that, they learned confidence. They learned they had a place in a world that too often shut doors on them before they even knocked. It became more than fixing cars. It became about fixing mindsets. These girls started standing taller, speaking louder, asking tougher questions. Some of them had been bullied in school for being too boyish. Others had been told they'd never be good enough. In my garage, they were told something different. You are enough. You belong here. And Jason, he changed too. I saw it. Not just in how he carried himself, but in the way he spoke about the experience. He started using his voice to uplift, not just me, but the mission. He shared his side of the story in interviews, business panels, podcasts. He talked about how wrong he'd been, how much he'd learned, and how important it is to listen before you judge. And people listened. Some reached out to offer scholarships, others offered internships. The ripple was now a wave. What started as a dare in a crowded parking lot became something I never expected: a movement, a shift, a chance for the next generation of girls, especially Black girls, to see themselves as builders, creators, leaders. And for me, it was never about the McLaren. It was never even about Jason. It was about every girl who ever doubted her own power. I fixed more than an engine that day. I helped ignite a spark. And trust me, it's still burning. If you've ever been doubted, let this be your reminder. You don't need anyone's permission to shine. If this story moved you, drop a heart in the comments. Share it with a woman who needs to hear it. And don't forget to subscribe. Your story could change a life too.